time together. We're grateful for your word. We're grateful that your word is so much bigger than our lives, and that we get to take a step away from the pain of the busyness and the rush and the pressure and see what you're about, your bigger vision. Thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, this is our third time together, everybody. The righteousness of God in the Old Testament, really it's kind of the story of the Old Testament we're dealing with. We're doing it in 12 weeks, which is, hey, this is weird. Hang on just a second. Let me stop this very briefly. Okay. And we talked about in the first week how the Bible is in 5 acts. If you want to look at the storyline, God creates heaven and earth and appoints human vice-regents to rule the earth on its behalf. The human vice-regents rebel against their liege, leading to chaos and corruption on earth. God calls into existence the king of Israel as his tool to end rebellion and restore his rule on earth, but the kingdom rejoins the rebellion. God sends his son as the embodiment of faithful Israel, and it calls the church into existence as his tool to end rebellion and restore his rule on earth. And finally, God restores his rule on earth and renews all creation. Act 1 is chapter 1 and 2 of Genesis. Act 2 is chapter 3 through 11. And then chapter 12, and we did that the first week and the second week. And then Act 3 is Genesis 12, all the way pretty much to end of the Old Testament. And then Act 4 is the New Testament, and Act 5 is Book of Revelation, kind of right at the end. Actually, that very last part of Revelation, chapter 20. So this is in the future. We're living in this age, but this is the storyline. Okay. We already covered the first 2, and then we're going to spend the rest of our time on Act 3. Okay, that's kind of how it goes. So, quick reminder of what we did in the first week. Now this was supposed to be the first week, but we ended up doing it last week too, talking about creation and authority, and we ended up with an understanding of humanity as kings and queens, as the creation that God did of order and structure was designed to culminate in creating a world in which humans can rule. Humans can prosper, human lives can prosper, and they can rule over of the creation. So Lewis writes, the pressing of that huge heavy crown on that small young head was a symbol. Oh, that's not, that young head is this one, okay. That's Queen Elizabeth, June 2nd, 1953, coronation of Queen Elizabeth. The pressing of that huge heavy crown on that small young head was a symbol of the situation of all men. So Lewis recognizes that all men are created to be kings and queens. And that what we see as Queen Elizabeth becoming queen, it really is being coronated, is really the situation for all of us. This is where we're at. Elmer Martin's pretty much saying the same thing. One aligned with 1 being the brutish animal and 10 being God, humanity is an 8 or 9. There's a very high exalted view of humanity that's given to humans in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. High view of humanity. Which is important because all about tragedies. All tragedies are a fall of the great ones. Fall of a corrupt person is kind of boring. Fall of a tiny little creature is boring. It's like, that's not a tragedy. That's just like, but a fall of a great one is tragic. And so the fall of Genesis 3, the consequences is that these regions rebel and they become corrupted in the process. They corrupt the creation and the area they rule in the process. So what is beautiful, what is peaceful, what is prosperous becomes decrepit. And the result is this. We have the rebellion, chapter 3, and then we have fratricide. We have a brother killing a brother. It's like, wow, this is the thing. First thing that happens is murder. Okay, we're killing each other, and then we have a violent retaliation in Lamech. And these 2 tales frame the development of human culture. So human developing music and arts and all this kind of stuff, and it's framed by murder and revenge. And that juxtaposition is the biblical view of human culture. Human culture is this wondrous display of arts and music and all kinds of things and technology surrounded by distrust, hatred, and vengeance. Okay, it's just an interesting juxtaposition. There's a preservation of a single godly line from Seth. God is trying to preserve some people from which he can then sows the seed for redemption. And there's a line that is preserved. But that line really gets in trouble by the time of Noah, in which there's only 1 guy left. Everybody else is now completely corrupt, and the creation itself is corrupt. So God rescues that 1 person left, and bless and also creation from the corruption of sin, using the flood, and then blesses the formation of many nations. He kind of creates this possibility for many nations. And then the final story, we have the Tower of Babel story, which we talked about last time. God delivers humanity from a totalizing cultural hegemony that co-opts religion for the purpose of empire. We looked at how the Tower of Babylon, the Babylonians, used religion to make everybody the same as them. The idea is that you guys all should be like us. And God really kind of undermines that claim of human unity. He says your human unity is really based on similarity. That's the only way you can pull this off. I'm going to give you different religions, and you just fall apart, right? Because you notice God actually didn't drive them apart. They could have stayed together, right? But because they can't speak to each other, or not even, I'm sure they can learn each other's languages pretty quickly, right? We certainly able to do it, but they won't stay together. Human unity is based on similarity and self-love, and the moment God gives them a little difference, they fall apart. And so now we have the backdrop. We have now the backdrop for God's decisive action. Okay, so that gets us to today. Welcome. So, any questions on any of this? Okay. The backdrop is humanity's fallen to a whole bunch of nations. They're warring nations. They're divided. So God is now going to create a particular kingdom to rescue and redeem the whole thing. Okay, that's his plan. Any questions? Comments? Okay, let's push forward. The one in the middle. The call of Abraham, the kingdom of Israel. The passage, this is the pivotal passage in the book of, actually the Bible. And when I mean pivotal, I really mean pivotal. That is to say, it's not important, it is the pivot of the story. The story changes. Like I said many times before, Genesis 1 through 11 is the first part, and then from Genesis 12 all the way to the rest of the Bible is all about what God is up to trying to redeem the world. So this literally is the pivot. This is where it all happens, right here. This is the passage. So, Yahweh said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great. You will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Okay. What do we say about this passage? Yahweh, the creator God, talks to a single individual. He's done that before all the way through, and Abram is from the line of Seth, the godly line of Seth. The Seth all the way to Noah, all the way through to all the way down here. So this has been the line that God's been preparing, and now time has come to pull this off. People have noted that there's a connection here to the Tower of Babel story. The Tower of Babel story talking about they want to make their own name great, and here God says, I'm going to make your name great. There's kind of a verbal connection to the Tower of Babel story. The Tower of Babel story, human beings are seeking to build their own reputation. Here God says, you know what, I'll take care of that for you. Okay, work with me. Okay. We also note that the Tower of Babel creates the space for God's redemptive plan to happen. That you need multiple nations for God to put in his own nation. Whereas if all the nations, all humans are united, it is impossible for God to then inject his own little, small little country that says this. That big country isn't going to want to swallow this up. But if you scatter the peoples into small nations that are warring, that are in conflict, now there's space for God to do something. So God is now in the nation building business. He's going to build a nation. Okay. First thing about this you notice is go. People have commented that God's injunction to Abram was to go some other place, to make sure that you're alienated from your past and alienated from your present, wherever you end up. You're going to be a foreigner where you end up, and you're going to be apart from anything you're similar to. We're getting back to the similarity-dissimilarity problem that we talked about already from the last time, which is somehow this nation is going to be not flowing out of Abram's homeland. It's important that this needs to be something distinct. It has to be something new. It's something that's not a traditional, like we just got it from Babylonians. Okay, this is a very interesting, different storyline. For example, the founding of Rome, you guys are familiar with
Romulus and Remus.
Right, exactly. What the book is called. Aeneid, yeah. Aeneid, you're familiar with the story of Aeneid. They want to draw their founding story from the Greeks, from the Battle of Troy, right? So you notice people who found new nations, they want to say, we come from an older tradition, and that's a good thing. That's the ancient understanding. And this story written online is a rejection of that. Saying, leave. You don't really have anything to do with that. That's not where it's coming from. I will make a nation. It's going to be a brand new enterprise. Right? There's a kind of a rejection of the tradition that you're drawing from. Okay. We're not basing it on some Babylonian great hero. That's not Israel's beginning. Israel's beginning is you're ditching everything. Okay. Leave your country, leave your people, leave your father's household. Breaking of connection to land, connection to culture, connection to family. Okay. It is an absolute breaking. All of this. Let me jump straight to a reader response. Or homiletics. Remember the three exegesis, canonical synthesis, and homiletics. Jumping to homiletics, people would note that today's, I work with a lot of Chinese immigrants. They get this because they've done this, right? You leave your country, you leave your culture, you come to a place, and the people who actually then do the whole naturalization thing and become an American, they get this. They get this in a much deeper way because they actually understand what it means to actually almost not renounce, but saying, okay, I have a previous narrative of my life, and now I'm adopting a new narrative, a new storyline. So that, like my kids, they're learning George Washington, they're learning Abraham Lincoln. That's their story. It's kind of weird. It's like, yeah, but your ancestors were never there. But that doesn't matter. Right? So there is that adoption of narratives, okay, that goes on in this process of creating new nations. And I think for us as Christians, every one of us is a naturalized citizen. Okay? We have our own storyline, our people, our family. When we walk into this, we're naturalized into the kingdom of God, in which we then adopt a new narrative, a new history. And that's actually what we're learning. We're learning the history of our people. Okay? This is absolutely critical to understanding the Old Testament. This is not some Israelites. This is us. This is Abraham's our ancestor because we're adopting this. Just like a Chinese immigrant says, "Oh, George Washington, that was our first president." Okay, that sense of us and the sense of our is what the Old Testament is about. These are identity-forming narratives. Okay. That's pure. Jumping straight to homiletics. Okay, let me come back to exegesis. Just a couple of words. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. Blessing in the Old Testament means power for life, or prospering of life. It means fertility. It also means kind of a. I think prospering is the best word. It doesn't have to be fertility, but it's generally human prospering. I will make you into a great nation. So nationhood is being promised here. Prosperous. You will have a great reputation, and you will be a blessing. So you will be a source of prosperity for others. You notice this word blessing keeps showing up. I will bless you. You will be a blessing. I will bless you. But this blessing keeps showing up. The verbal echo goes straight back to Genesis 1, where God says, "I will, be fruitful, multiply. I will bless them. Be fruitful, multiply." Also in contradiction to Genesis 3, where God curses the land, the cursing. So what we have here is, I think, an intentional echo. This is to fix the problem of Genesis 3. Okay, there was curses that happened because of human rebellion, and now God's going to bring blessing back in, and the blessing is going to come through Abraham and his nation. Okay. Couple things about this nation. The mechanism by which God blesses the nations, the families of the world, all people on earth will be blessed through you, is not extremely clear. Okay? It's not extremely clear. Later on we can talk about, as the story progresses, we'll see how exactly does that work. But what was given here is you will be a source of blessing, and the way that happens is this. Let's look at this line. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. Did you catch that? It is not. It is, okay, people think, oh, be a blessing means what? It is generally taught is be a blessing means go and do nice things for people. Okay. That's not what this text says. This text says, the source that I will be a blessing to you, Tom, in the sense that if you see me and bless me, God will bless you. Okay? It's a very strange dynamic. It's not, go be nice to Tom. That's not my job. My job is, Tom looks at me and recognizes in me my relationship with God in some ways. Who blessing me, like, oh, in him is life. And then God says, Tom sees correctly. Tom is blessed. Somebody comes along, Lena comes along, oh, this guy, Charles, can't take him, right? And in him is life, and he's like, well, she does not recognize the life. God says that person is cursed. So Abraham and his nation serves as a litmus paper that reveals the other nations of where they are in their recognition of life and death and cursing. Does that make sense?
What about the part that says, I will bless those who bless you? Sorry, I mean, and you will be above that where it says, and you will be a blessing.
Yeah, and how will you be a blessing? So I would say this is that is exegetical. The next verse explains that. Okay, I will bless you. I will make your name great. You're gonna be famous. You're gonna be like, everybody's gonna know you. Okay, and you will be a blessing. How? That's how it's gonna happen. And then people will be blessed through you. Via this process will be the blessing of the world, the reversal of the curse. Okay, it's a very interesting mission.
Charles, will that apply to God's blessing as well? When he says, I will bless you in that first line.
Yes.
Is that sort of saying, you better recognize the life in me?
So this is different, right? I will bless you as unconditional, right? First of all, come to the land I will show you. So there is conditional. You need to leave. You need to follow along and join this mission. You do this and get to the land. I will bless you. I will make you prosperous. I will turn you into a nation, and then and I will make this prosperous, and it will be a famous nation. Okay, worldwide, known worldwide. And then this nation will be the method by which I bless the nations, reversing the curse. How will it happen? Nations will interact with it, and they will recognize in a goodness, and they will be blessed in the process. If they hate it and want to attack it and destroy it, then they will be cursed. Okay. So Israel serves as a litmus test. Israel serves as the means by which other nations are evaluated. Right? You see that? You see that, right? Okay. So I know that people like to say, "You will be a blessing. Be a blessing." No, you read the next line. There's a way in which this blessing happens. Okay. Now, what does this entail? What is necessary from this? I mean, what does this plan require?
They rightly show forth their God.
Exactly. Israel's nation, Abraham and his descendants, the nation, must reflect God. Otherwise, it wouldn't function as a litmus paper. It would fail badly at it. It would be utterly unjust. Okay? So now you see the problem built into this very mission. Now, I'm jumping homiletics very quickly, or canonical synthesis. The mission of the church has now changed one bit. They will know you because of your love. Okay, they will see the way you love each other, and they will know that I am there. Jesus shows up. People all those who believe in me are saved. Those who reject me are rejected. Their sins are already convicted. You read the Gospels. Jesus becomes this new Israel, and then after that, the church becomes this new Israel. They serve the same function: stand in the middle of the nations, and then serve as the litmus test. People who say, "Oh, this is amazing," they join in. People say, "This is horrible," and they curse it and they reject it. And the problem has always been and continues to be, how well does the people of God reflect God? For this mission to work, the people of God have to reflect God. There's no other way around it. Okay? There's no private Christians. I'm totally homiletics right now. Sorry, but the call to the Abraham covenant, the call to the Abraham vocation, is to be in the midst of the nations, be named great, and have everybody respond to you. You can't go hide somewhere and practice your private faith. It doesn't exist. It's not part of the option. It's not part of the mission. Okay. So there's a missional parameter laid out right here at the beginning. Okay. Questions on this? More questions?
A little bit more about nation. I mean, obviously these nations aren't quite the nation states as we understand it today.
No. So, okay, go ahead.
I mean...
Oh yeah, so city-states, ethnic states, they're not nation-states in our present sense. But for example, you will have, there are a lot of ethnic groups, tribal, family, groups did manage to get themselves bigger, usually by military force, right? So empires did rise already at this time. This is roughly around 1800. You already had a Neo-Babylonian. I mean, the old Babylonian kingdom was already in existence. The old Hittites were already huge. So,
The Egyptians are big, right?
Egyptians are always big. Yeah, the Egyptians, the Nile era, they're always big over there. But they go up and down. The Egyptians go up and down. So at this period, the Egyptians didn't really expand outward that much. They were able to take Sinai, a bit of Canaan, but the nations that were able to really project their power were the Mesopotamian empires. So the Akkad, the old Assyrian empires that were all kind of all over the place. Early on, so 2200 to 1800 BC. So.
Charles, what I'm asking is there a sense of a different kind of social contract, a more familiar, relational sort of vinyl? Is it still, I mean, our contracts are so legal in some ways?
Yeah. That's a good question. I would say you want to throw in massively into religion into this. Okay, so a little bit hint that we saw earlier about the Babylonian is that, okay, we have kings. Kings are divine, the sons of God. Everybody knows that. And then, so how are we united to this? We are this people. We have these culture. We have these language nations. So it is not. And if you want to go the other route, it's heavily patron-client. That's very heavy. The Old Testament nations are almost always patronage relationships. Let me back that up and clarify what I mean by that. Old Testament societies in the ancient world typically work in terms of patron-client. What I mean by that is, I'm the king. I offer ability to appoint and give privilege to people, and then they are loyal to me personally. They do the same, passing on the power down, all the way down. So this patronage relationship extends all the way down to the very lowest farmers and the lowest workers. Everybody is in some ways tied personally to another person. I think the closest relation we have actually is grad students in your PI. That actually is a patron-client relationship. Okay. The rest of us who are not in grad school, not rest of us. People who are not in grad school actually don't get this. Oh, I don't have the job, I go get another job. My relation to the government, I don't have the sense of, I know somebody in the government. Right? It's all very abstract, it's very legal. Their relationship is very personal. It's all very directed. The king has connection to this group of people. They go all the way down, and this permeates the entire society. Okay. I hope that's helpful. Okay.
Hey, Charles?
Yeah.
So, when we were reading this passage, I didn't see anything that would specifically mean that Israel has to do anything except to leave their country.
Yeah, I mean, Abraham, yes.
Right, sorry.
Right, you're right. So that's why I said it's implicit.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Where is it? Because
it shows up in Exodus.
That shows up in Exodus.
By the time they actually build their nation, you will then see it. They will talk about nations will look at the country and go, look at what laws they have.
Okay.
Look at that people, how God is in their midst. And they're going to go, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that was kind of and we'll see that when we get to Exodus.
I was just thinking because it didn't seem like there's any onus on Abraham at all here other than to leave.
Yeah.
There was no onus on whether he was supposed to act a certain way or not.
Right. So we're gradually. I'm projecting forward.
Gotcha.
I'm saying the logical response to this, entailment of this, in the Old Testament, that's the direction exactly where it heads. God has to get a people to live out His character, otherwise the mechanism doesn't work. So I'm jumping ahead. Now, and the reason I'm jumping ahead is because this Genesis 12, 1, 2, 3 really lays out the entirety of the rest of primary history in terms of what goes on. If you want to look at this, if you want to think about the kingdom, God says, I will make you into a great nation. A nation, especially back then they're all kingdoms, it needs 4 components: people, land, common law of some sort, culture, value system, and then a king. Let's make sure the order is correct. People, culture, land, king. That is your division of the Old Testament story. It progresses exactly like that. Okay. So go
You're
ahead.
including gods in culture?
I'm sorry?
You're including gods in culture?
God's.
So you're saying culture.
I mean law, really, constitution. But I'm calling culture is in God's trying to create a value system. God is doing nation building. He says, I'm going to use my law to create a sense. So let me back this up. You'll have all kinds of questions when we get to the laws. Like, what is it? How does this function? I keep saying, laws. Most of our laws are trying to regulate us. Israeli laws are designed to create a certain kind of cultural consciousness, religious consciousness, value system. They're designed to transform and make a people. Okay, so they do all kinds of things that we go, that's just silly. Yeah, but it's designed to remind them at every turn who they are. Okay, so it's a very different set of laws than what we're used to. Okay? Our laws are designed to protect us from each other. There's more to smooth social interaction. Their laws are designed to create national, missional consciousness. Okay? It's a different set of laws. God's doing nation building, and so He creates laws for those purposes, different from ours. So let me begin to show you how this works out. When I talk about the people, 1 and 2, Genesis 12 through 50 is the patriarchs. It gives you the ancestors of the kingdom. Okay, these are the people from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Jacob's 12 kids. Okay, and in that storyline, we're going to find out kind of get an opening glimpse into the kind of people that God is looking for. What is God about? What is he trying to accomplish? What does his people have to be? The question you're asking. Where is the responsibility on the people lie? Right. So we have that, and we're gonna spend time on this today. Exodus 1 through 19. Now the people is formed, and the defining moment, the defining act of Israel coming into being is to be freed from slavery. So they're in slavery. God brings them out. And now we have an established relationship. Who are the people of Israel? People of God. They are people freed from slavery. Right? And they're being brought out into freedom. And in gratitude, God says, we're going to form this relationship. There's covenant making at Exodus 19:20, in which this people section stops. And the laws show up. So we have the whole section on people, and then we have a section on laws. The law of the kingdom, Exodus 20 to Deuteronomy, into which there's a whole bunch of stories of failure, which we have to track that. The land of the kingdom in Joshua, they get the land, and then we have the failure. Really, the people completely fail in the book of Judges. Okay. And then we have a necessity of kingship and the gift of kingship and the failure of kingship in Samuel and Kings. So you want to think about the Old Testament. This is a trajectory, the story, the 4 components of people, law, land, and kingship. Really, this kind of divides up the entire storyline. It depends on where you're reading. Oh, I'm in Samuel and Kings. Oh, it's all about the kings. It's all about leadership. Why? Because people already failed. The Levites already failed. And Judges, the Levites already failed. Everybody's failed. This is not working. Now it's the hope of the nation is reduced down to one person. Okay, if that person's okay, the kingdom's okay. If that person failed, the whole thing falls apart. We're at that point now. And then it falls apart. Okay. And so it depends on where you're reading. And you also should, as you look at this, you realize the trajectory is one of failure. Right? The story of the kingdom of Israel is God's solution, in quotes, to the problem. Okay. So that's important. Recognizing Genesis 12, 1 through 3 as being kind of the missional statement, as laying out the structure of the rest of the Old Testament and the New Testament. Because what happens in the New? Is the original mission changed? Leave your father, create a new nation. I will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. That applies right to Jesus and applies right to the church. And there's no change in terms of the mission. So, and the failure of the people is addressed by the coming of the Holy Spirit, and the failure of the kingship is addressed by the coming of the King. I'm jumping way ahead to the final talk, how this all connects to the New Testament, but it just gives you a glimpse of where this is all going. Okay. Just want you to note that this idea of blessing to the nations is not a one-shot deal. Genesis 18:18, Abraham will surely be a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. This is third person. God's talking, and he's talking in deliberation about this. And because of that, he's actually going to tell Abraham what he plans to do with Sodom and Gomorrah. He's going to elevate him to a level of a counselor. I'm going to make Abraham one of my confidants, because he is going to be this great thing, this great partnership that we're going to have in this redemption of the world. I'm elevating him to be somebody I talk with about what I'm going to do. Okay? Now, jump straight to homiletics. Our relationship with God should be working toward that level. What I mean by that is we have a tendency to put God so far out there. God, oh God, versus the relationship of the Old Testament God, with the individuals and God are so dynamic. The humans, the patriarchs treat God as their confidants. Okay, I know it sounds almost weird, but Abraham was there sitting there bargaining with God, like, well, if there's 50, will you do this? You shouldn't do that. How about 35? I mean, he was doing that thing with Sodom and Gomorrah. You can be familiar with the story. He's like, well, I'm 10. How about 10? He's doing this stuff. We wouldn't dream of doing things like this because we have created a God that is too distant. Okay, and I'm trying to push that the Old Testament places us, or God views us, as highly exalted beings that is empowered to rule the earth. Right? The earth will be blessed through him. Therefore, I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to bring him into the conversation. Bring him a seat at the big table, and see what he says. Wow. Okay.
But Charles,
Yes.
that whole conversation about Sodom and Gomorrah, it does not also sort of say that that's the heart that God's looking for.
Absolutely.
Someone sort of offering others up to God again.
He reveals himself.
Yeah.
Abram's qualities are revealed in this conversation. Now, do you think God wasn't going to do that? I don't think that's what's going on. But I would say, if you have let's say you have a rich uncle, I guess, who's a CEO and top runs a massive Fortune 500 company, and you're like an MBA student and you're coming out, and he kind of pulls you along. He says, okay, well, I'm training you up, and eventually I'm going to give you one of my subsidiaries. Come into the board meeting. Come and sit at the table, and we're talking. Hey, Miriam, what do you have to say about this? Not that anything you say is going to change anything, but it's for you to join in the conversation, for you to realize we're training you, we're building you up. God's in the process of training us to rule. So that's what he has in mind for us.
And it's such a gentle, sort of compassionate rule. I feel like the church today, sorry, uses homiletics, I suppose.
Yeah.
But we spend so much time just judging the world and saying, oh
Yeah.
my God. Instead of actually bringing them and offering them before God and saying,
Yeah, and absolutely. We should be. Basically, don't be afraid to talk to God about what you think. That's me. I'm going to start with that. Abraham wasn't. He said what he thought. Don't be afraid to tell God what you think about what you want to happen. Okay. And I'm in the process one right now. I can't share it. It's confidential issues that are at work, and I'm actually having arguments with God about things right now. I'm learning this process. I'm going like, I can have a say in this. I don't want some certain things, and I feel like he's going to push certain things on me, and I don't want it, and I'm going to tell him about it. Now, does that mean I'm going to be wrong? I'm going to not eventually go along? Probably eventually go along. Yeah, okay. But I think that's a helpful process. It's a helpful process. The relationship is alive. It's not static.
But God talks back in this situation
He does talk back.
very
And-
clearly.
Yes. And God does talk back. Just takes a while. I just got an email today. It was God talking back. It was like,
My email address.
wasn't from God, but it was this email this morning. I was sitting there praying, and this morning an email came. Like, are you kidding me? Ah! And I was screaming, going around the house screaming. Okay, but I won't get into that. This is getting way too personal. But we can spend more time talking about that some other time. But you will see it as I talk about God's relationship with these individuals. That God takes individuals very seriously. Every single person. Okay, seriously. Okay, he treats them. It's like important creature, important being.
Charles?
Yes.
Most of the stories that I'm thinking of that fit this vein are usually the representatives of God's people.
Yeah.
And it's easiest with Abraham because
Right.
he's all there is of
Right.
God's people at
Right.
this point. But in what sense is it fair to actually extend this to individuals now,
Mm-hmm.
given that we're
So are they special? Is the question?
Yeah, we are representatives of the people of God, but
Right.
we don't speak on behalf of the entire people of God the same way,
Right.
say, Abraham,
Right.
Isaac, Jacob, Moses,
Right.
David would have.
Right. Right. So the question is, does he do the same with just regular people?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
with components of his
Right.
people as
Right.
opposed to
Right. That's
people as an
it's
aggregate.
a very good question. You know, we start with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then we go to Moses, Joshua. I think prophets are interesting beings, but then they're especially called by God. They're distinct again. We're creating these levels. Book of Judges has interesting. Let me think. Stories about regular folks and their relationship with God.
and they cease to be regular folks as soon as God is interacting.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Right. So that's exactly what I'm getting at. Is we're meant to be kings and queens.
Mhm.
Okay. The interaction with God elevates us, ennobles us, and then when we get to the New Testament, remember I'm jumping way ahead, but the New Covenant is not some will say know God, but they will all know me. The Holy Spirit will be poured out not just on prophets, but on old men and young men and maidservants. It's that oneness with God and the pouring of those Holy Spirit into every single person. So every single person has the life, in fact, indeed superior to Abraham's relationship with God. You have to say that is the case. That the Hebrew says that Abraham looked forward to this, right? Or in Romans 4, where he says you have the faith of Abraham, except he was living kind of in anticipation of what you're seeing now. So what we have to believe now is that we have this dynamic, alive, living relationship with God that is superior to Abraham's.
You have the words of Jesus, right? That's it. Joseph is
We get to call Father.
right. So Joseph, if you believe it, he was the greatest of the prophets, but the least in the kingdom.
Yeah.
Only greater than he.
So I would actually, So I would definitely go that direction, and I think that's the message that our churches need to hear badly, because we kind of see ourselves as whether these super Christian apostles, they're up there, and these prophets, and we're kind of the regular folks, not realizing that there is no regular folk. God, you are a unique creation of God. Never been one like you, never will be. And God made a masterpiece. And what he wants is this masterpiece to live these full lives. Okay, empowered by the Holy Spirit, transformed, ambitious, bold, humble, all the fruits of the Spirit, in communion with God, that kind of full life. Nobility, kings and queens. That's the vision. And so,
I almost
yeah.
feel like sometimes our definitions of that exceptionalism are perhaps walked by the word because we're in it.
Yeah.
It's almost like when I read that story about Abraham, he was exceptional in loving someone fairly unlovable in that way, and that's why he was that blessing.
Right.
I mean, the call and the blessing are in some ways the same.
Right. So we want to create, by making people in the Bible exceptional, we alienate them from us. And in some way, it gives us kind of we don't have to live like that. But
Or it gives us a false sense of,
Yeah.
the blessing of Abraham as this rich, powerful nation.
Yeah.
I mean, that is it.
No, that isn't what it's about. No, you're absolutely right about that too. That if you saw that, you would realize there's people who are going to curse you, which means jumping straight into canonical synthesis. That line already entails persecution, right? Some will bless you and some will curse you. So, yeah, you're absolutely right about that too. But your life will prosper, just not necessarily wealth and material. But Jesus talks about, you lose this, but you're going to gain it back in a different way, right? So we'll have to get to the New Testament one day. Okay, let me just keep going on this. So you see this. I mean, it's the same phrase over and over again, right? I will bless you, make your descendants numerous. The skies are in the sky, you descendants. Okay, and through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me. All your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed. In Genesis 26, 28, all peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. This thing just kind of repeats itself. This is the mission of the Abrahamic people. Okay. If you want to jump to Exodus, just kind of, this is where we are. This is what you're to say to the descendants of Jacob and all that you tell the people of Israel. This is when they already left Egypt. You yourself have seen what I did to Egypt and how I carried you on wings of eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my commandment, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine. Right? Whole earth is mine, but you will be special. You will be this intimate, special relationship I have with me. And you will be for me a kingdom, a priest, and a holy nation. So now we're getting to answer your question about what do they have to do? They're to be a kingdom of priests and holy. Set apart and distinct, priests are people who mediate God. They teach God and stand between God and others to draw God to them. A whole nation designed to bring God, reconcile God to all the other nations. That's Israel's job. Okay. So at this point we see, so that's what Abrahamic people are supposed to do. And people see the holy nation and they bless it and say, oh yeah, you guys are great. Then they are drawn close to God, and God's power, blessing goes upon them, and their relationship is reconciled. When they see it and they go, we don't like this at all, then their wickedness is now thoroughly revealed. They see good and they hate it. Okay. Which requires that they be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Okay. Let's move past this. Just a couple of schematics to kind of. I'm still staying with this idea of this pivot. Genesis, the pivot right here. Genesis 1 through 11 is the primeval history, the basic problem. The pivot of Genesis 12, we are like right here in this pivot. And I wanted to compare the two stories schematically, very quickly. We talked about the Tower of Babylon. One people, they wished to create a name for themselves for the purpose of staying together. They built a religious tower, hoping to use, with God's divine sanction, to achieve that great name in order to stay together. So what we talked about was, they're being religious, yes, but they're using religion to achieve their ends. Okay. What's being used, the agent, God, shows up and causes problems. He divides their language and creates many peoples, and that completely contradicted with what they had in mind. Okay. So in that story you have an original agent using something to achieve something. That thing that's being used didn't like being used. The tool rebelled and said, I'm going to achieve a different end and mess up your goal. Okay. This is the story of Abraham. What's going to happen? This group is going to cause problems. Okay? So you're like, I just noticed the storyline's already present. That the tool that's being used is going to complicate the problem. So we have it right in the Tower of Babel, and God says, I'm not going to be used. Well, you know what? Israel's not going to get used very well either. And that's going to be interesting. Okay. So I want to point that out as kind of a few, anticipation of where this story is going. For the rest of our time together, we have choices. The fact of the matter is, I prepared way more stuff than we can talk about. Oh my God, I have like 50 slides. I'm on 16. We can't do all this, and so we're actually getting into kind of the interactive part of this lecture now, where you get to choose.
Like choose your own adventure.
Choose your own adventure, exactly. Now, there is a choose your adventure a part of this. The stories are told. The thing is, once you have Abraham, then we have a whole bunch of stories of individuals. Why are they there? Okay. So these are myth. Sorry, I shouldn't use myth. These are identity-forming stories, which is one of the definition of myth. Okay, that's why I use this. Sorry about that. I don't mean it's false. I mean it's identity-forming for the community. These stories tell the people of God who they are and who they're supposed to be. Okay. So there's a whole bunch of these stories that show up in there, and it's powerful because they occur on an individual level. So we kind of really relate, like, oh, so this is what kind of God wants among the individuals of the people before we become national. Okay. So we can do a story of Abraham and his faith. Now, there's two really big stories. One is kind of his covenant with God, and we can do that one. The other one's Genesis 22, the offering of Isaac. I didn't put that in there. There's just too much. So you can choose the covenant of Genesis 15, the covenant making one. We can talk about nature of faith. We can do that one. Isaac's story, I've actually turned it into kind of a Jacob versus Esau story. So if you're interested in that one, like, why is Esau not selected? Why is Jacob selected? What's going on in that story? I think that could be a fun one. Isaac's story, it's actually fairly obvious what's going on there. A person pretty much sacrificed his entire faith because he likes food. Okay. It's kind of sad. It's one of the great tragedies of the storyline. And one of the things to remind us over and over again, in the Bible, temptations are never complicated. They're always extremely basic. Food, sex, money. It's like just basic bodily appetites trip us up. Okay. The Bible, and here's this danger of getting too much into, I really like hunted food. That caused this huge problem, and Isaac becomes a major threat to the people of God. He becomes the thing that actually need to be opposed. Okay, and God succeeds in tricking him. Okay, so that we can talk about that story a little bit. Jacob is a life transformer. And we can talk about his entire life briefly in summary, and then focus on the passage, the wrestling with the man of God, the man or God section, which I think is an interesting focus on how does Jacob become a different person, the life of transformation. Or we can look at the final part of the book of Genesis and understand the essence of kingship. And here is a Judah versus Joseph story. People usually like to talk about Joseph as being the main character. I think the storyline, as read properly, this is where I'm talking now, properly will reveal Judah as the hero. And it's going to reveal what kingship is about in the book of Genesis. Okay, so vote. We might be able to get two in. So I'm sorry. Let's just do. Anybody want to? How do we do this? Let's do show of hands. People want to do Genesis 15, Abraham and the covenant story. Raise your hands, please.
How many?
Yeah,
do we get to vote?
How many to vote? Great. Typical grad student approach. We want to learn our voting system first. Should we have an alternate, like, do you rank your 1, 2, 3? If you lose your first vote, lose the second? No, we're not doing that. How many have 2 votes? You get 2 votes. Okay. How many want Genesis 15? Nobody wants Genesis 15. It's too familiar. We know that story pretty well. Okay. What about the Jacob versus Esau story? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Jacob wrestling story, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then Judah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
If I had 3 votes.
Okay, so I think what we have here is a Jacob and Judah kind of tie, and we might have to skip the Esau versus Jacob for now. I don't know. We're gonna have to get a time. Let's jump then. Okay, I'm gonna jump to which slide are we on? Let's jump straight to the second to last one. That's slide 25. Here we go. This is the Jacob story. It's a nice summary of all the things that talks about Jacob in Genesis. And this, what I want you to do is when we read through this, get a sense of who Jacob is. Just even without even going heavily into details. Jacob struggles with his twin brother in the womb. There's a fight going on, and he loses the birthright. It's funny when he pulls out. Esau comes out, and then there's the hand grabbing the heel, coming out, whee, and here comes Jacob, right? So you have what it looks like is the twin brothers are fighting who gets out first.
Poor mother.
I'm pretty sure Ree
Well, mother was not happy.
Experience.
Mom was like, "What is wrong? What's going on? What's going to happen?" They're fighting inside the womb, and he actually goes see a prophet about this, right? So there's actually a problem, and he loses the birthright. He wants to be the oldest child. And the next story we find is that Jacob then buys or extorts birthright from Esau. He wants to be the oldest son. By the way, the oldest son is not only double blessing of the cup, but really the idea is that the birthright goes to the person who will be the leader of the covenant family. Okay. So one of the things I talked about between Esau and Jacob from the previous story that's important to recognize that. Why does God pick Jacob over Esau? Jacob's a jerk. Esau's a nice guy. The difference? Esau doesn't care. Jacob does. Esau has no concern for the covenant. If we spent time on the previous story, we would have looked at all the ways that describe Esau. It's like, this guy's just clueless. He doesn't get the covenant. And that if you handed the covenant leadership to him, it would have destroyed God's mission. So God's going to hand it off to Jacob. Okay, we can evaluate who he is, but he has one thing going for him. He wants it. He really wants it. Okay. So Jacob buys the birthright from Esau, and then Jacob deceives his dad and steals the blessing of the covenant. Jacob escapes to Paddan Aram to avoid the wrath of Esau. Jacob encounters God on the road.
Well, now he cared, right? So after the fight, Esau apparently cared.
Sorry.
So you said that Esau did not care, but why is he then angry if he didn't care?
Well, he cared. He felt like he got cheated. He didn't care about the covenant.
I see.
And there are hints of that. We'll have to go back to see where it shows up.
Right.
There's a cluelessness to him
Mhm.
that the text really makes clear. And he's like, I feel bad. He's just like, he's in this family that's all about his mission. And he's walking around going, what mission? You know what I'm saying? He's kind of out of touch with the whole covenant, the thing that this family is about. Okay? Jesus just never gets it. He's not evil. He's not bad. He's just not with it. And God says he needs somebody who's with it, who wants this. Okay. So not that Jacob is a great shake or anything like that. Okay. Now let's keep going. Jacob encounters God on the road.
If anyone's cold and wants a blanket, there's 4 blankets over there if anyone wants to grab one.
Okay, let me just briefly highlight this section on Jacob encounters God on the road, and we're trying to get a sense of who Jacob is. Okay, so
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So you said that Jacob was ambitious.
Yes,
Was it a selfish ambition though, or was it ambition for God?
he probably both. I mean, if you want to think about, so the storyline tracks Abraham being alive all the way till the twins, Jacob and Esau, probably up to their like 12 or 13. Abraham was around. If you want to do age overlap, and there's a text in the Bible where it talks about Abraham is slated to teach his children. If you grew up on the lap of Abraham, we are chosen by God to start a great nation, and it would be a fantastic thing, and all nations will be blessed through us. And Jacob's like, yeah, that'll be me. Okay. Now, I would say both would be the answer, right? I get to be the savior of the world, and God's plan gets executed, right? So I would not say there's definitely conflict between the two. I definitely think that Jacob has issues here, that he wants it so badly he is going to act. He is going to extort it from his brother Esau, who doesn't seem to be as interested in this, and then he's eventually going to lie to his father. And there's a line in there that's just cold, where, how'd you find the animal so fast, my son? He says, God gave it to me. It's like, oh my God. He just lied about this, invoking God's name. It is one of the cold moments in this passage. He wants God's blessing, and he lies about God to get it. Okay, scary stuff. Okay.
Was Jacob born before Abraham died?
Yes.
The ages given?
Yes, both of those are, both of the twins were born, I think at least a decade before Abraham died. So there's definitely interaction between the two, even though the text doesn't talk about it. But I think you can assume that when Jacob wants something, it isn't just merely money. He wants this. Now, we're trying to figure out who Jacob is. Here's a little passage that when he first meets God, he's now, getting pretty up in his age, and He's on his way. He's running away from his home because he screwed things up so badly with his brother. Jacob awoke from his sleep. He thought. So God gave him a vision, right? He said, surely Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, or Beth El. And this is the gate of heaven, which is actually Bob Elu. But okay, let's not go there. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called the place Bethel, or house of God, Beth El. It's the same word. Though the city used to be called Luz, which is a big city. Then Jacob made a vow saying, now listen to this vow, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear so that I return safely from my father's household, to my father's household, then Yah will be my God. And the stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. Okay. Characterize this prayer.
Bargain.
His relationship with God is a bargaining prayer, right? Okay, I saw this great vision. Awesome. You're going to give me all this stuff. Okay, if this actually happens, and when is it going to happen? It means I make it home safely. I'm on my way leaving now. When I get home all the way there, when I get back, and nothing happens. Okay, Esau doesn't kill me when I get back home. Okay, he's young. He's going to go back. He wants to go home. He's leaving. When I get home, then you'll be my God. Okay, conditional. And then I will give you a tenth. I'll buy you off. I'll give you something. That's where this come from, God. okay. I will give you something.
You better give me a lot because then your tenth is going to be bigger.
It's an interesting story. So okay, now are we getting a sense of Jacob?
No, this is after he already has like the large flocks because he's left Laban.
No. This is
No, this
before.
is when he's-
This is on his way out. He has nothing. This is when he has a Zippo.
Got it.
And he's on his way, and God he encounters him for the first time in his life. He gets this dream, ladders, angels going up and down, and God promising him stuff. I will be with you. I'll take care of you, and I'll bring you back. And he says, okay, if you actually pull this off, then you'll be my God. Okay. So we have an interesting view of Jacob here. One more thing to look at before we jump to the final section. This is when he actually arrives at Padan Aram. This is a fascinating story. He's traveling to his uncle Laban's place to really avoid getting killed. Jacob continued his journey and came to the land of the eastern peoples. There he saw a well in the open country with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it. So there's a well and there's 3 flocks of sheep. Because the flocks were watered from that well. That's fine. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. Big stone blocking the well. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll away the stone from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to place over the mouth of the well. Okay, so all the flocks have to get there before they can move the stone. So far there's 3, and they cannot move the stone. So how big is the stone? Big enough that 3 shepherds can't move it. Right? You're catching the details given in the story. Biblical writers never give extraneous detail. Details are always useful. Okay. Why are they emphasizing this? Well, they're giving you the system. Flocks get there, they wait until all the flocks gather, and then all the shepherds come and lift it up and move the stone, and then they move it back. Okay. Jacob asked the shepherds, my brothers, where are you from? We're from Haran. They replied. He said to them, do you know Laban, the horse grandson? He says, yes, we know him. And they answered, so all right, he's okay. And then Jacob asked him, is he well? Yes, he is. Good, my uncle's still alive. They said, and here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep. So, okay, my cousin, right? Look, he said, the sun is still high. It's not time for the flocks to be gathered. He says, Jacob says, well, shouldn't you guys get watered? Right? Why are you guys waiting? It's still high. It's not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to pasture. We can't, they replied, until all the flocks are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we'll water the sheep. Now this is repeated twice now. They're really making sure you get the detail. We can't do this. Okay. While she was still talking to them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherd. When Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of his uncle Laban, and Laban's sheep. Oh, by the way, the next line tells you that Rachel looks hot. So when Jacob, so you have to realize going, okay, what's going on here? Next line. Oh, okay, I didn't put that in. But when Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of his uncle, not next line, the next passage, you'll find out. He went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of that well and watered his uncle's sheep. Rachel. Pretty cool, huh? Love this story. Okay. By the way, there's an echo here to Abraham's servant. Remember how Abraham's servant was at the well,
Yeah.
and he was like, and what does he do? He prays.
Yeah.
He says, I need to find a wife for my son Isaac. You know, the first woman comes in and waters and offers to water my camel. That'll be the one.
Yeah.
So he's in prayer. So he's finding a wife at the well, and he's doing it in prayer. And then we have this story of Jacob meeting his wife at the well, and prayer is the farthest thing from his mind. Okay? By the way, there's a lot of meeting women at the well stories. You have this one, then you move on to Moses, who also meets his wife at the well, and then you have the very interesting Jesus meeting the woman at the well story. Try reading that story in light of all this. Okay, there's these motifs that are moving across. Okay, but anyway, what do
I
we?
gotta quickly ask, did you meet Serena at the well?
No, I did not.
Maybe a drinking fountain?
No, I was at my apartment. I was busy doing dishes though.
That might be something.
That might be. There was water involved. There was water involved.
Exactly.
And you were mildly cleaning the dishes.
Okay, mildly conditions. That's a long story. Okay, so can we actually get some? Okay, let's just skip ahead. Arrives at the house of Laban, his uncle. Laban cheats Jacob, using his daughters to enslave him for 14 years of slavery, and then further along to work for his inheritance, work for wealth. So basically, turns him into an indentured servant. Okay, for years. Jacob has 12 sons. Then Jacob cheats Laban, steals his flock. And then Jacob escapes from Laban and returns home, and then encounters God on the road home.
Yeah, just keep stealing stuff.
So look at his life. How would you characterize? What are some words you would toss out to describe Jacob?
The cheater, right?
He's a cheater.
We know
He's
that
a
already.
cheater. What else?
He's also clever
It's
Very clever,
to some extent.
tricky guy, clever. He will take advantage of people's weaknesses, without a doubt. His brother's weak from hunger, coming back from a hunt. Here's some food. Give me the birthright. Take it. You want it? You want it? You want it? Fine, give it here. Here you go. Okay. He will take advantage of people and their weaknesses. He will cheat people. He's not trusting. Doesn't really trust God, right? Once I see you bring me back, then you'll be my God. Okay. The faith is. I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it.
How he interacts
That's-
with people, that's not very surprising.
That's not very surprising. He's not trustworthy. He doesn't trust others. Extremely strong. So we have a person who's physically a great physical specimen, lifting stone that 3 people can't lift or more. He's doing it. Extremely strong, extremely intelligent, clever, trusts himself, doesn't trust anybody else. Sound like people we know? Anybody? I would say grad students we don't have necessarily the physical specimen part. Okay, not necessarily, but I think we there we go, man. There we go. But definitely the trusting part, trust ourselves part, right? We're skeptical of others. We trust ourselves. Oh, by the way, this part, 12 sons, that's actually one of the major part of the story, because God's finally broken the kind of the barrier and produced all these kids. It's also a huge commentary on Jacob. Okay? 4 wives, 12 kids, virile man. Okay, they're fighting over him. They're like the wives are dealing with each other. Okay, I get this, you get him for the night. So he's kind of the stud. Okay, literally just kind of designed to impregnate women. Okay, that's his job. So we have a virile man, physical specimen, intelligent, clever, and skeptical. Okay. So how does God break through to this guy? Right? How is this guy going to be the representative, the leader of the people of God? Okay, you reach this point, you read the story and going, look at this guy. Oh, by the way, he does not have good relationship with people. How's that? Everybody who gets to know him eventually wants to kill him. Okay?
So like,
He has to run away from people. This guy does not have good social interaction with people. Eventually things go wrong. Okay. So that's something else to learn about this guy. So let's get to the story. So he's on his way home. This is now with a big, huge flock, with his 12 sons and a daughter, with the four wives. Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. Okay, and he saw them. He says, "Wow, this is the camp of God." So he named that place Mahanaim, which means 2 camps. That's cool. He saw a bunch of angels. He's on his way home. He saw a bunch of angels. He says, "Okay, this is good." Why do you think that happened? Why are the angels there? Well, the reason is he's heading home, and he's a little nervous. A little nervous. So I think God's sending angels to say, you're being protected. I got your back. Don't worry about this. So let's see what happens. Jacob sent messengers ahead of his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, "This is what you're to say to my lord Esau." He's very careful, very clever, very rhetorical. "Your servant Jacob said," your servant, by the way, not your brother, not the person who got the blessing, therefore leader of the family. No. You're a servant. "I have been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle, donkeys, sheep, and goats, male and female servants." Why did he mention that?
I'm rich.
I'm rich. Therefore,
I have been protected you.
I don't need.
I don't need you. Oh, okay.
I don't need to split the inheritance with you. You're the man with our dad. Dad's still alive. The mom just disappeared. I'm not here to fight the inheritance with you, even though I got the blessing. Right? I'm supposed to have the blessing, which means I am, in some ways, more than half of what you have is mine in theory. Okay, but don't worry about that. I got my own stuff. So now I'm sending this message to my lord that I may find favor in your eyes. And I could bribe you as well. That's coming up. When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, "We went to your brother Esau, now he's coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." 400 men versus the angels of God, the camp of God. Okay. In great fear and distress. Okay, so now what Jacob is now being in a situation where he can't cheat himself out of the situation. He is now in trouble. Jacob divided the people who were with him into 2 groups. See, what is he doing? He's still doing the strategizing. This guy said, he's gonna play every card. He's gonna play every card, right? So, divide the people who were with him, 2 groups, flocks and herds, camels as well. He thought, if Esau comes to attack one group, the other group may escape. So put him one here, over here. He meets that group, they get wiped out. I go off with this one, no problem. Okay, and then prayer.
Finally.
Now, by the way, this is the very first time he prays since he met God. There is no other mentioning of him praying at all while in Padam Aram. All those years, okay, 20-some years, not a single instance of prayer. 0. He's back. "Oh God of my father Abraham, my God of my father Isaac," pulling. Remember them? Okay. By the way, not my God, by the way. Their God. "Yahweh, you who said to me, 'Go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper.' I am unworthy of the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, now I have become 2 camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children." So, by the way, their kids involved this, so God, you gotta do something. And if I die, they become, orphans and widows, and that's not good. "But you have said, I will surely make you prosper and will make you descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted." You said this, you promised. So I'm going to hang on to your promise.
Charles?
Yes.
I've got a couple of questions. Was the covenant name Yahweh provided to Abraham?
Yes.
Isaac, okay.
Yes.
All right. And
Which will get you, Exodus will answer that question. Why were they not known as Yahweh in Exodus 6 and Exodus 3?
yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there there's some indication that Jacob does actually love at least Rachel.
Oh, yeah.
Out of all of this.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So when he's splitting them up so that one of the camps can get away, it's probably not going to be the camp that he's in, right?
We're not sure how he splits them.
Okay.
We keep going. Just watch, okay? We're not sure how he split them. He split them first in case they do a surprise attack. Then he's got other plans developing.
Okay, because
Yeah.
while I'm totally on board with him being selfish and thinking himself self-sufficient and all of that stuff, there's some part of this prayer that I could see as not being entirely self-serving.
True. But watch how it happens.
Okay, all right.
Watch what happens.
Oh,
and
he sends him over. Yeah.
Then you realize, Holy cow! Really? Is this what you're really gonna do?
Wow.
Seriously?
Wow.
You're gonna watch to go, wow, this guy's really a piece of work. Okay. He spent the night there, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau. 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 male camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, and 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. He put them in the care of his servants, each herd by itself. This is really brilliant work. Brilliant, in terms of experience, designing an experience for Esau. He said to his servants, go ahead of me and keep some space between the herds. Okay, he instructed the one to leave. When my brother Esau meets you and asks, who do you belong to and where are you going? Who owns all these animals in front of you? Then you have to say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau. See, we're not brothers. Your lord, I'm servant, okay? And he is coming behind us. Okay. He also instructed the second, the third, and all the others who follow the herds. You are to say the same thing to Esau when you meet him. And be sure you say, your servant Jacob is coming behind us. For he thought, we'll pacify him with these gifts. I am sending ahead. Later, when I see him, perhaps you'll receive me. So Esau comes forward, meets the camp. Oh, my stuff. Oh, good. Jacob's coming. Another one. Another one. And if you accept too many gifts from somebody, you can't kill him. Right? It's just kind of psychology. At some point, you keep accepting gifts. At some point, you gotta stop. So, all right, it's kind of embarrassing at this point to kill him. Okay? You gotta stop. So that's his plan. He's gonna manipulate Esau into not being able to kill him. So Jacob's gift went ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in the camp. Now, that night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives and his 2 female servants and his 11 sons and crossed the ford of Jabbok. And after he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions, and then Jacob was left alone. He sent his kids over and his wives.
So away or towards Esau?
Towards Esau, across the river. He sent everybody over. He's going to be the very last.
Well, that's just his family, though, right? Yeah, presumably he has a guy, they come behind him. The whole.
So in all the gifts in front, and then possession plus family, and then he's last now. Okay.
But he's not last. I mean, I think he's right only taking his family, immediate family from the camp. I think he's leaving the camp behind, isn't he?
He sent them across the stream. He sent them all his possessions.
Right. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives.
Right. He took the 2 wives and he crossed the river, and then he sent them across, and he sat by himself there.
But
he stopped.
he doesn't say that he took everyone with him. He just says he took his family with him.
And all his possessions.
The next one.
He sent all his possessions. The storyline is intended to. The storyline is intended to bring Jacob into a complete isolation after he sent everything forward. It is also to accentuate his cowardice. Okay. The storyline is intended to show you that he is going to be the very last person that Esau kills. If he kills everybody. Okay. He's got the human shield in front of him. Okay. The storyline is to accentuate this, and then we're going to see a change. This is about the nadir, the depth. Okay. Jacob's going to pull every card he has to survive, because he's that kind of a person. Okay. And then we're going to see a transformation in Jacob. Go ahead.
Isn't he leaving himself kind of vulnerable, though, sending all his reinforcements ahead? Because then he'll be showing up by himself, essentially.
Right, but the idea is that if he, I think the idea is if there's slaughter in front, he would know about it.
So he could
Just ditch.
hope there are no mountain lions if he's out there by himself. Like you would think of I think that'd be a more scary position to be in than.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's not afraid of the mountain lion. He's afraid of his brother. His brother had 400 men. He doesn't. I don't think he has 400 men.
And he's had plenty of practice in running away by himself.
Yes, he has. So 400 men is a battalion. That can do some serious damage. Okay, he doesn't have 400 men. Okay, he can't run unless you ditch the flock or ditch the children. All right, so he can run and probably get away and maybe run with a couple of slaves. But the slaves are not going to stay with him. If you're going to lose the flock, there's no way to sustain anybody. So his wife and children can't run. So there's problems here. So let's get to before we are overwhelmed by our disdain for Jacob. Here's where the story gets absolutely bizarre. Okay, and becomes somewhat mystical. So Jacob was left alone, and a man. By the way, Hebrew is very clear. It's ish. It's a man. Okay, the narrator says it's a man, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. who is this guy? Why would some guy come in the dark and start wrestling with you? Okay? When the man saw that he could not overpower him, so that man was wrestling Jacob and he can't beat Jacob. Jacob was good. He touched the socket of Jacob's hip and that his hip was wrenched out of socket basically. Okay. As he wrestled with the man. And then the man said, let me go for this daybreak. And Jacob replied, I would not let you go unless you bless me. Then the man asked him, what's your name? Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. And Jacob said, please tell me your name. But he replied, why do you ask my name? Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel. Well, let's stop here. Let's stop at 30. What's the problem with this story? Aside from the obvious one, what the heck is this guy doing there? There's some problems with this story.
It's a man, yet he's wrestled with God.
The narrator says as a man, Jacob thinks he's God. Right? It began with man, and then at the end, the hero, the one I think we're supposed to believe him on this. He wrestled with God. Is the narrator right, or is Jacob right? One of them has to be right, one of them has to be wrong. All right? If Jacob is entirely deceived, it's just a man, the story makes no sense. Because how does this guy behave? He behaves like God. In doing what? In blessing him and changing his name. Right? God changed the name of Abram to Abraham. He changed from Sarai to Sarah. He does name changing. It's kind of this, I'm going to reveal the direction of your life and change it up. Previously, you are Jacob. You're a person. Jacob means heel grabber, because he was grabbing on the heel when he came out. Somebody who trips people as they walk by, grab their heel, they fall over. He's a person who causes other people to stumble and fall, which he does. You know, turns his brother into a loony, raging, megalomaniac, psycho. Who wants to kill people, wants to become a psychopath. Well, he changed his name to Israel. This name change thing clearly is kind of the God's role. And Jacob accepted as such, asked for blessing, accepts the name change. How do you resolve a story like this? Right?
God came in the form of a human.
So I would say, here's the thing. I think the
God disguised himself as a human.
he can disguise himself as a human, but right. So I think this is critical. I think the narrator and Jacob are both right. And why is because when you want to think about Hebrew writers and the way they construct stories, they don't go in for as much kind of logic, like you see in Manos, you got the kind of metaphysical certainty that we go into, but much more symbolic. And the symbolic line, the most critical line in this passage is verse 28. Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. You've wrestled with God and with humans and have overcome. In this story, he was wrestling with God and humans. Okay? Well, this is the kind of story, kind of literary writing, in which you start thinking, oh, there's God and human involved in here. Which means when he's wrestling with human, he's actually wrestling with God. Right? When you think he's wrestling with human, he's wrestling with God. Who has he been wrestling with? Esau, Isaac, Laban. He's been wrestling with humans all his life. Who has he actually been wrestling with? He's been wrestling with God the whole time.
God's covenant.
He's been wrestling with God the whole time. God's trying to help him, but this guy's just fighting and struggling. God wants to give him, wants to grant him stuff, and he's this kind of fighting and struggling type. And so this story is kind of in some way symbolizes his entire life so far, right? Because you go from man to God, and you realize he thought he was wrestling a man, he's actually wrestling with God. Well then, if he's been wrestling with all the other guys, he's been wrestling with God the whole time. Okay. So that's one thing to recognize about this story, about this line. You have wrestled with God and humans. The second part is a really bizarre one. How has he overcome? How did he win?
Yeah.
How did he win?
What does it even mean to win against
Yeah.
God?
So you have to say, so here's the thing about this story that you have to read carefully. First of all, if this is somehow a God man, then Jacob is portrayed as a person who's able to wrestle God to a standstill, to a stalemate. Right?
And
God-
this is great.
This man God can't overpower him. Okay? So what did he do? What did God do?
Bless him.
Broke his leg. Ripped the socket right out. So that from then on, he has a limp. He lost the power of his strength. You lost your leg power right there. You lost it. You can't wrestle anymore. So what did Jacob do when he can't wrestle anymore? Held on tight and begged for blessing. That's the storyline, right? If you look at the storyline, he's wrestling, he can't win, his strength is broken, and he's just doing like this now. I'm not letting you go until you bless me. All right? I can't win anymore, but I'm not going to let you go. So what we have in the storyline is, and then the man turned around and says, okay, you won. It's like that. You asked for blessing. You are holding on tight, and you're not using your strength anymore. Okay, you won. I'm going to change your name now. Okay. These are fascinating ways of story writing, right? Isn't it? You look at the details of these things. Is that what's really in the story? Or is it just some crazy story that makes no sense? But when you start looking at the details and how they fit together and how they fit what's gone before and you what comes after, Jacob's a different person at the end of after the story. He really is. You watch the details of his life. He becomes this person who prays, and in some ways superior to Abraham and Isaac. I'll give you a hint. Both Abraham and Isaac, during times of famine, run off to Egypt. The one person who refuses to go, Jacob. Jacob says, I'm not going. You guys go buy food and bring it back. We're not leaving this land that God gave us. Faithfulness to the covenant, more so than Abraham and Isaac. He's stubbornly faithful, until God actually gave him permission to go. Then he left. So we have this transformation that happens right here, and the key to that is the breaking of his power and turning him from a strong, powerful, clever man into a person hanging on tight in need and begging for a blessing.
Charles, would you say that again? Because often today you hear the story of somehow you must have. In some ways, it's the end of human striving,
Yeah.
and yet it also somehow seems as if there is the human effort of holding on
Yeah.
to the very end.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I know that my mom says that we have to persist in prayer. This is all about persistence.
Oh.
Uh-huh. How do you?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how homiletically this works. I would say within the storyline, you have transformation of Jacob. You have to see this whole story as kind of a symbol of the entire story so far, of this entire thing. Actually, wrong one. This one so far. Struggle, fight, cheat, back and forth, get to this point. I'm wrestling man, I'm actually wrestling God. And this God said that this guy breaks his leg, and he's like, oh, now you won. Right. I think for many of us who can relate to Jacob, who are really strong and really clever, and trust our own strength more than anybody else's, we can get this. Like, God, you're struggling. God doesn't really want to struggle with you. He just wants to get into your life, that you trust Him and create this relationship, but you won't because you put up this wall. It's like, I'm not trusting until I see some things here. I don't want, and that gap, that shield, really prevents us from getting to know God. And so Jacob, being one of the patriarchs, faith is one of them, and here transformation and reliance on God, not on your own strength, is at the heart, at the kind of the DNA of the people of God.
Nice if there were a comparison, sort of like of Jacob before,
Yeah.
like of Jacob after.
I'm sorry.
Like of Jacob before.
Yes.
Like of
Oh, you want to see the
after.
Yeah, I didn't just put that one in there, but you go on and read it, because what happens is well actually, I like this passage. This is a great passage. Look at the last few lines. The sun rose above him. Gotta love
Wow.
this. You think about the final shot of the movie, right? The sun above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. You got this guy just limping along by himself, and the sun's rising. Right? Sun rising. We all know the symbolism of sun rising. The life has begun for this guy. His strength is broken, and now because he has overcome, he doesn't need to struggle anymore. He can just limp the rest of his life. Okay? And the sun is rising. Then there's a little interesting comment about how Israelites don't eat a tendon attached to the socket of the hip. Presumably, cow hip. Because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon.
Presumably that wouldn't be very tasty anyways.
I don't know. But anyway, there's a little explanation about that. That there's a long-term implication of this. But I love the verse 31. It's almost like movie-like. Sun's rising and him limping all the way, crossing the river, going over there. And the next line, he meets Esau and they greet each other. It's all good. And then you see him behaving in ways that are just unlike Jacob, not seeking conflict, avoiding conflict. And such. So you'll see it. You can go and read it.
So he can't run away anymore when he's crossing the river.
That's another good point. He's going nowhere. He is going nowhere. But he's going by himself. He's going to go there and he's going to march along, and the sun's rising. I don't know how you filmed this. The sun's rising.
Is the geography of this area known by any chance? Was the sun rising behind him? Was the sun rising in his face? Because that could create two very different pictures.
Yeah.
Of like, is he feeling hopeful or is he triumphant? Sun
Yeah.
rising behind him is like
Triumphant?
he has
He's
endured
limping
and
along.
I know, but he has endured.
He hasn't-
like all of these things.
Right.
He is Jacob victorious.
Yeah.
Versus he is Jacob like renewed. When both are certainly
Yeah.
the case, but
That's a good
the
question.
tone set by the story would be different.
I don't know. I think sun rising, the symbolism of hope, symbolism of newness, new creation. I think that symbolism is clearly present here. That his life has been changed.
In the same way, of Stephen's question, it just feels like he's not, he hasn't gotten his fair share of scolding from God or man. It just feels like, oh, well done you struggled, and yeah.
You want him to suffer more.
I don't know, no
Well,
remorse, no nothing.
How about a permanent lip to the rest? Permanent lip.
There is that.
There is that, isn't it? Yeah. There's a permanent lip to remind him that his power is not sufficient. That
Yeah.
he is now confronting the greatest crisis of his life. Doesn't matter how smart he is. Esau, a vengeful Esau with 400 men, he has no chance. He can give it all up, or he can just go face it and confront it. And in the whole night struggle, he comes out triumphant. He's won. He knows he's gonna win. He's gonna win because that's what his name says. He has already won.
So what does the night have anything to do with it? I mean, the guy seems to be kind of, afraid of the daybreak. Let me go because it is daybreak.
That's a good question. Why is he afraid of daybreak? He's like a vampire. It's unclear here, right? I mean, it's almost like Jacob's thinking about, I was spared because I saw God face to face, but did he really? Because it's dark. Is the issue there? If the light comes, he has to leave because then he'd be revealed as God. It's unclear. There's not like I have light. And it's completely dark. It's pitch dark. There's someplace wrestling. It's pitch dark. So I don't know. But he certainly behaved like God in every way. Don't ask me your name. You don't need to ask me. You don't need to know my name. I can change your name. I will bless you. So, yeah. Okay. How much time do we have?
What time is
It's 11:18. What do we advertise? 11:30? A little bit more?
it? 11:45.
11:45. We have. All right. Let me talk about the final one. we're going through about 13 chapters, and we can't do that. But let me walk with you through this storyline. Starting from Genesis 37, we have the stories of the sons of Jacob. Jacob is no longer an interesting character because his life is transformed. Okay. In the story, well, no, his kids become really interesting, right? And then we have the story really about the kids. Really, 3 kids, 3 sons are named. Okay. And we have to find out what the story is really about, and then you realize in the storytelling what the narrator is trying to tell you about each of them. Okay. So let's begin. Jacob lived in the land where his father stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flock of his brother, the sons of Bilhah, the sons of Zilpah, and his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. So, what are we learning about Joseph? He's a tattle.
Yeah.
Let's be specific. He's a tattletale. Right? He's a tattle. What does that say about his relationship with his brothers? Okay, not good. So already we're starting the problem question of, we're dealing with the issue of, well, not yet, we'll see exactly the issue we're dealing with immediately. But Joseph, Israel, Jacob, loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. Why? Because he's smart, because he's intelligent, because he has good integrity, he's ethical. Why? Born to his old age. The text is explicit about this. Okay? You need to make sure you understand that Joseph is not any better than the other sons. That's not the reason why his father loves him. His father loves him because he was born his old age. So chances are most likely to think about this. When his other sons were born, he was out tending the flock. Never saw his kids. Came back late. Kids are sleeping, whatever, growing up. Now he's retired. His older sons are out there. Joseph is showing up. Oh, Joseph, you're wonderful. You're brilliant. You're so cute. It's like the relationship gets built. He loves Joseph. Benjamin's too young. Okay, so 2 young brothers. Benjamin's too young. Joseph's like perfect age to get to know Jacob while he's sitting in the tent, no longer tending the flocks because the older kids are doing it now. Made an ornate robe for him. Or the coat of many colors is translated in the other text. When his brothers saw that his father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Does the robe have any significance? It could, especially if you look at the next passage, which is this. Joseph had a dream. Told of his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We're binding sheaves of grain out in the field, and suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed to it. His brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? They have no problem explaining this dream. They understand the dream in terms of kingship. Will you actually rule us? Stop right here. What family do you know of that you're talking about reigning and ruling with each other? That's not standard conversation. Okay? This conversation is standard in this family because this family
Comes from Jacob.
is the covenant of family. It has the Abrahamic covenant. So they're all Jacob's kids. Do you understand something now? There's no Esau among the 12. Okay? Previously, Isaac had an Esau was not interested and Jacob was hyper interested. Here's Jacob's there. They're all Jacob's kids. They're all interested. They all want to be the leader of the covenant. Okay? So we have 12 boys. Who's going to be king? We're going to have a future kingdom. It's going to be a great nation. It's going to be a blessing to all the nations. Who's going to be king?
And it's not guaranteed it's going to be the first one because, well, Jacob.
Look at Jacob, right. There's no guarantee the firstborn's going to get it. They're not going to fight for the birthright. Right? No point doing that. My dad, there's no need to do that at all. Right? And then, giving an ornate robe to Joseph says,
You're the king.
this is the father's selected king figure. Maybe. Okay? Maybe. You see the dynamic in this family. It's a very strange dynamic. Most of us don't have this dynamic in the family. We have parent playing favorites and all, but we don't have the idea of reign and rulership. Joseph is going to be king. We're not happy about this. Because why? Because he's a tattletale. Right? We don't like this jerk. He is not a good leader. You want to think about leadership abilities being shown here in development? Joseph is a person who has very poor leadership skills. He tattles and then he tells stories that alienates his brothers. Had another dream. Joseph, shut up, Joseph. He told it to his brother. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. When his father told him as his brothers, his father rebuked him, like, okay, that's enough. Enough of that. And said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his fathers kept the matter in mind.
How do stars and how do spherical objects and round objects bow?
It's a dream.
It's a dream. I don't know, I wasn't there.
They proceed before you.
I don't quite understand how that works.
Crescent moon, I can picture.
Yeah, I don't know how it works. I don't know how it works. But
the father immediately saw him and his mother as the sun and moon, right?
I know, yeah, he's a little slightly megalomaniac as well. But they get the symbolism, and they immediately they're immediately thinking kingship.
Also, there's only one moon.
Right. So the sun and the moon, father, mother, 11
So
stars.
essentially, only Rachel counts.
I don't know what to do with that one. I don't know. Somebody, you had a comment?
Isn't she dead already by then?
Yeah, Rachel's dead. Yeah. But okay. Let's move on. Any question about what we're seeing about Joseph? In this, what we see is a young kid who's really not very bright in terms of keeping good relationship
Savvy,
with his
right?
brother.
Might be
Lacks savvy,
Social savvy.
social savvy. Yeah, EQ is low. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. He's
What
like
is that? He thinks he's great. I mean, he really thinks he's great.
he's what, 17, right? Probably good looking. He's like, I got my code. I'm good. My dad loves me. You guys, I got these dreams that are telling me I'm gonna rule over you suckers. Okay, this guy has no leadership skills. We know that, at least none at this point. Okay, we're gonna jump ahead a little bit. You know the story, I hope. If you don't, you have to go read it. Joseph's on his way to visit his brothers, again to provide reports. His brothers see him coming and decide to kill him. Wow. And that takes you right back to Cain and Abel, and straight to Esau and Jacob, right? This the fratricide theme in the Genesis. The sin in his ability to tear brothers apart, have them kill each other. Right here, it's continuing on. So, Reuben heard this discussion. Reuben's the oldest, so this is the second boy that's been named now. So there will only be 3 who will be named specifically in the storyline. And those are 3 characters you will get to compare and contrast. It's very interesting. Reuben heard this and tried to rescue him from the hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. What is his thinking? Well, it tells you. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. Let's stop right there. What exactly is this plan? What would Joseph say when he gets home? Once he's rescued? It will say, Reuben saved me, all the other brothers tried to kill me. Who's cheating who here? Who is tricking whom here?
Reuben's tricking.
Well,
Reuben is tricking the rest of the brothers.
Yeah.
you don't have to see
And
it that
Joseph.
way. You have to see it as Reuben liking his brother Joseph. And
Sure if you want, but if he likes his brother, what does a true leader do?
Let's not take his life.
He's our brother. We can't do this. Moral integrity, you stand up to he's the oldest. You guys are full of nonsense. We're not harming our brother. You guys are crazy. End of story. Any of you try to do that, I will slap you around. End of story.
on the other hand, they are there like 10 of them. They could throw both of them into the beach.
Then stand and fight them. Right? If you're talking about moral integrity, ethical integrity, you would fight these guys. You would take leadership. So so if you want to put it that way, here's a Reuben who is not trusting of his leadership skills. Right? He doesn't think that he has the ability to lead his brothers. But I would say even worse than that. His plan is to do this secretly. They're going to kill him. Don't kill him. Leave him in a hole. He'll die with the idea that he'll die eventually. They're going to let him there to die. Right? That's the idea. Well, then after they leave, Reuben comes back, grab him out of the hole, take him back secretly, and now who's in trouble? Who's going to be the king? Who's going to be the favorite son? That's their end result. I don't know about the motivation, but that is the end result. The other brothers are going to so get it. Okay? Reuben is going to be the hero. But not via leadership. Okay? Not via leadership. What we see here is a failure of leadership and a back to the kind of a Jacob approach of double dealing. They're Jacob's kids, man. They're Jacob's kids. Reuben said to rescue him. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe. That's the one they hate, right? The ornate robe he was wearing. They took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water. And they sat down and eat their meal. And later on, we'll be referencing this part where Joseph is crying out for help. They actually heard him crying out for help, and they're just eating. Okay. They looked and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. The camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them out to Egypt. At this point, the third character shows up. Now, for some reason, Reuben's not here right now. We'll find out later that Reuben isn't here in the storyline. Judah, the fourth brother. Judah's number 4. So it's Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. And he asked, he said to his brothers, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites, not lay our hands on him after all. He's our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed. Who is the leader? You want to talk about kingship? Who has leadership skills? Judah does. How does he use it? Badly.
To get more money.
To get money. So is he a son of Jacob? Absolutely. They're all sons of Jacob. They're like, that makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. You're right, he is our flesh and blood. Let's just sell him to Egypt. Okay, it makes sense. So when the Midianite merchant came to his brothers, pulled Joseph out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. And there's that little great scene in which they took the robes, scattered it, covered with blood, and they sent it back to him. This is your son's robe. Right? They used the clothing and blood to trick their dad, just like Isaac used his brother's clothing to trick. Jacob's brother. Jacob tricked his father Isaac with clothing. Okay, so Jacob gets what's coming to him. He tricks his father. His sons trick him. Okay, so there's comeuppance. It just takes a while. Okay.
Not to be too entertaining, but how much money did Judas get to betray Jesus?
40?
I thought it was 20. Was it 40?
30.
30?
20.
It's inflation.
30.
I don't know if there's a connection there or not. Okay. Now, here's where the storyline gets really interesting, and I think people who say, "Oh, the story's about Joseph," need to stop, because this is the end of chapter 37, and if you think Joseph is a main character, then the story should really go to Joseph. Sorry, I jumped ahead. Let me get to this part first, and then we'll come back. Reuben returned to the cistern. See, Reuben wasn't there. And he saw that Joseph was not there. He tore his clothes. He went back to his brother and says, "The boy isn't there. Where can I turn now?" He's freaking out. And they didn't tell him. This is great, okay? They didn't actually tell Reuben what happened. So who's tricking who? Reuben's trying to pull a fast one, and they're pulling a fast one right back on them. It's great. I love these brothers.
This is such a dysfunctional family.
You think? You think? And what's great about this, Isaac favored one son, causing murderous rage.
Right.
Jacob does the same thing.
Right.
Multi-generational dysfunctionality passing right along. Okay, he's gotta love that.
Exactly the same ways.
Yeah. Jacob does the same thing. He's like, "Wait, your dad did this to you. Why are you doing this to the rest of them?" He's just like, "Joseph, I love this kid. He can't help himself."
So he was transformed, but he still had these fundamental flaws.
Yeah, he doesn't change. No, you're right. He has some issues. He still has issues.
And he's still being called Jacob in a lot of these stories. He's definitely not Israel.
Well, they got Joseph's robe. They got a slaughtered goat, dipped it in blood. Okay, and they took it back. He recognized that this is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph's surely been torn to pieces. So he's now faked out by his own sons. Tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, mourned his son many days. His sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. Now you have to realize what we're talking about here. In a time of mourning, we're talking about no music, no sex, no feasting, no any kind of partying. The whole house turns dark. Okay, you're talking about these tents. There's no partying whatsoever. It's just dark and quiet. Okay. And the problem here is, he says, "I'm going to continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave." He's the patriarch of the family. If he's mourning, the whole household mourns. This whole family just sinks into an extended, indefinite period of mourning and mourning practices. Okay. So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. Joseph goes to Potiphar, end of chapter 37. You think 38 will continue to Joseph's story. It doesn't. Of the 3 people named, the story turns to Judah. 37. The story goes to Judah. I should give you a hint right there. We named 3 sons. Who's going to be the main character? It goes to Judah. Judah loses 2 sons in the story in a chapter that I think I have never heard preached on.
It is so weird.
In which
Yeah.
onanism is
Yeah.
the name term is developed. We can go over it one day if you're curious. I can explain how what the whole thing's about. But what I want to get out of it is this. By the way, Judah gets tricked. He tricks his father. Judah gets tricked. It's all comeuppance.
Who
But-
was tricked by?
His daughter-in-law,
Her name is.
Tamar.
Tamar, and the storyline, I think it's clear, is Judah loses his 2 kids, and he's trying to protect the third. He's trying to protect the youngest. Okay? And he does something unethical to protect the youngest. That's what's going on in the storyline. Okay. Now you're gonna have to have Genesis 38 in mind when you jump all the way down to 43 and 44. Okay, I think that's what the storyline is about. It's about a father who's lost kids and he's desperately trying to protect his father, the youngest one. That is a father's love. Okay. We're gonna
I was
skip the
gonna say,
details.
isn't it in 38 where Judah says to Tamar, "You are more righteous than I"?
Yes, yes,
That calls into question the word righteous.
yes. But we're not going to go there in detail today. Okay, we're skipping 38, except to say that that is a critical location in noting Judah's transformation. He comes from a person who blithely says, "Let's sell our brother to Egypt. Let's make some money." He's that guy we saw earlier. To a person who was like, "Oh my gosh, I have 3 kids and get 2 down, 1 to go. How do I save this kid?" And finally realizing, okay, I've done wrong, but I'm still protecting that kid. Okay, that becomes a father's trying to save his son's life. It's a very strange understanding of saving a son's life, by the way, but that's what he believes. He believes what he believes. Okay, 39 to 41, we have this Joseph story, and I hope you guys are familiar with it, and just read it. It's an incredible move from being Potiphar's slave to prison to the de facto ruler of Egypt in a span of probably 15 years, just from the lowest to the top, the meteoric rise of Joseph in Egypt. And then the famine comes, and the sons of Jacob, the 10 of them, Benjamin stays home. The youngest son stays home with Jacob. The 10 of them goes to buy grain, and this is where things get interesting. But before we get there, there's a very important question that every reader would have occurred to ask, and which the narrator feels the need to answer, which is, once Joseph becomes the de facto ruler of Egypt, second in command to Pharaoh, why doesn't he go home? Right? It's not that far. Egypt, Canaan, lead a bunch of chariots, go over there. Hey, Dad. Oh, brothers. Beat up a few. I'm here. I'm ruling Egypt. Ha ha.
Well, maybe it's easier to rule from Egypt.
I'm sorry?
Maybe it's easier to rule Egypt from Egypt.
Well, to visit.
Oh, to visit.
Yeah, go over there, visit. Bring the dad back. Why doesn't he go get the dad? Right? What's going on here? Before the famine years came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. So he married, by the way, the daughter of a priest of the Egyptian religion. He's basically become an Egyptian. Joseph named the first one Manasseh and said, "It's because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household." God has caused me to forget everything. That's too painful. All that stuff that happened, all that covenant talk, come on. The family that will become a nation, that will bless the world, and we're all fighting to be kings in it. Give me a break. Come on. What the heck is that about? I'm in Egypt now. I'm running Egypt. Okay? I'm running Egypt. You guys becoming a nation that's going to be like famous nation and do the whole thing, forget it. That whole thing was a joke. That whole thing's silly. And you know what? You're not worthy of it. Any kind of family in which the brothers would sell another brother is not the kind of family that can actually be anything. Right? So, I've forgotten all this. My father's trouble. But what's interesting about this is that he still believes in God. He has faith in this God, but not in his father's household. He's basically saying, this God's good. The covenant people, not so good. Forget it. Next line. Ephraim, because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. I suffered here, now I'm okay now. God is helping me. God's taking care of me. This is the person who says, I hate the church, but I'm a Christian. Right? I don't need that stuff. That whole church thing and missional thing and the covenant thing. Just me and God. We're good. Just me and God. We're good. Now you know that's not gonna continue. Okay, God's gonna do something about that. Because God did not make him forget his father's household. Well, God's not gonna let him keep forgetting, right, his father's household. But he didn't go back. There's no explanation of why. I think this is as good as any. Right? That's all junk. I'm forgetting the whole thing. What about your dad? Well, who knows? It's hard to go back, and deal with all that pain, all that stuff, all that hurt. So why bother?
But Charles, isn't it actually brilliant that he doesn't assume for himself that role of the king and say, look, the covenant's actually come to pass already. I am the de facto ruler.
Yeah, except it's Egypt, not Abraham's children, right? So obviously the covenant's not working, right?
Or else, even if it works, let it work for them. I'm more powerful.
I'm more powerful. I'm Egypt. Yeah. So he, in a sense, he's like, I'm giving up. I'm not fighting by the covenant anymore. I'm not trying to fight with you. You guys can be king of that imaginary mythical nation that your God, that God is creating for you guys. I'm here in Egypt now. I've forgotten the whole thing. I'm past that now. It's understandable that he would do that. We have to skip some of this stuff. Verse 6, Joseph was governor of the land, the person who sold grain to all his people. Verse 7, as soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, pretended to be a stranger, and spoke harshly to them. By the way, he was speaking Egyptian. So they're talking to each other in the language, and Joseph understands it all, but he pretends he doesn't understand. He speaks to an interpreter. Where do you come from? He asked. From the land of Canaan, they replied, to buy food. And Joseph recognized his brother. They did not recognize him. Not surprising. He remembered his dream about them and said to them, you're spies, you have come to see where our land is protected. No, my lord, they answered, your servants have come to buy food. We're the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men, not spies. No, you're spies. Okay, so keep going. So they said, well, we're 12 brothers, the sons of one. See, the problem is, big group of guys. Like 10 men all together. 10 men? What's going on here? Why are y'all banding together? You must be spies. Or military outfit from someplace. From some other place. No, we're all brothers. Big family. Okay, we had big family back then. But okay.
In fact, we have 12 brothers.
We have 12 of them. One guy. We're all one guy. Oh, but the youngest one is now our father, and the other one's no more. So it's 10 of us. And Joseph says, fine, you are spies. You will not leave this place until your youngest one comes here. Bring Benjamin. Now here's a question. What does Joseph want?
He wants to be sure that Benjamin's alive, perhaps.
Here's your problem right there. Joseph, where is Benjamin? My brother, Benjamin and Joseph are the same mother, same father. They are actually true brothers, not half brothers. If they sold Joseph, what would they do to Benjamin? Right? When you think about Joseph's thinking here, Benjamin's not here, probably dead already. You guys might have killed him just like you killed me. So we're going to have you all imprisoned and send one of you guys back to see if it's true. And they put them all in custody. So Joseph is exacting his vengeance here. 3 days in Egyptian prison. That should be lots of fun. He thinks it over. And he says, 3 days, you know what? Let's just keep one of you. Send the rest of you back. You know why? Because you have families. You need food. If they all stay here, you might starve. So take it back. Because only one of you can't take enough food back. Right? So take the rest. Rest of you go. One of you stay here, but you must bring your youngest brother, so I can be verified that he may not die. He wants Benjamin there. So they do that, and they have this big discussion about, oh, we're being punished for Joseph's sake. And then Reuben says, didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an accounting for his blood. So Reuben thinks he's dead because they didn't know. They never told him. This is great. Now Joseph hears this, and what does he do? He doesn't let them select who to imprison. He grabs Simeon and immediately arrest him. Why?
Simeon number 2.
Simeon's number 2.
Is
Reuben
all-
didn't do it. It wasn't Reuben. He still got the wrong guy. Who should have he got? Should have gotten Judah. It was Judah's plan. He should have gotten Judah. But it wasn't Judah, and Reuben said it wasn't him. Okay, it wasn't Reuben, Simeon. Boom. And Simeon has a thing for violence anyway. Simeon and Levi are kind of violent brothers. So he grabs Simeon, has him in prison, sends the rest of them off. He doesn't give him even a choice on who to arrest. He grabs Simeon. I'm going to punish Simeon, okay, for doing this to me. The story goes that they, as they go back, Joseph put the money that they used for the grain, put them back in the sack. Why does he do that? It's actually one of the questions in the storyline. There's a lot of questions in the storyline. Why does he do that? My guess is, so go ahead.
Isn't this after they go and come back?
No, first time. This is the first time. They have the money's in their sack.
Oh, okay.
The money gets filled back in. My guess is this.
The 20 shekels probably really bothered him.
No. My guess is this. He wants to bring Benjamin back as quickly as he can. If you give the money to them, then they won't have an excuse of not having enough money to come back. Right? He figures, so Joseph, this is where I think Joseph actually screws himself up. He wants them to go and come back quickly. So, we got our money back. How great. We can go back and buy again. Let's bring Joseph this time and do it. Maybe he's counting on the greed of the brothers. He doesn't see the brothers as being very good people. You have them. You'll have the money. You might even come back and bring Joseph along this time. But what happens instead is they're explaining what happened to their father, and the silver pops out. And when they and their father saw the money pouches, they were frightened. Okay, so imagine you give your kids $100 to the grocery store to buy grocery. They come back with a grocery bag full of food, and then the $100 drops out. What are you thinking?
You stole the food.
What are they thinking? Things did not go well in Egypt. You tell me Simeon's in prison?
This is why.
Is he in prison? Or is he just dead? Did you guys rob for food and Simeon got killed along the way? You see the problem now? I mean, we don't know what Jacob is thinking, but whatever it is, I'm not believing a thing about your story. Your story is wrong, right? So if Jacob said to them, you have deprived me of my children. Joseph's no more, and Simeon is no more. Simeon is dead. You guys are lying to me through your teeth about what happened in Egypt. Okay? This didn't happen. Otherwise, money wouldn't be here. You didn't buy the food. You stole or robbed it, and Simeon's dead as a result. Okay, so so Jacob freaks out. And now you want to take Benjamin? Forget it. Everything's against me. And Reuben said to his father, this is where Reuben, right, the three brothers are named. Reuben comes in and exercises his leadership. You may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. If you lose your son, you can kill 2 of your grandkids.
Consolation.
It's really bizarre. I don't even understand this offer.
But it's very fair. I mean, he's saying, I'm
Right.
not going to
You lose a son, I lose 2 sons.
Yeah.
See? I lose more than you do. And Jacob's like, but those are my grandsons. I lose a son and 2 grandsons? What's wrong with you? Right? So Reuben's leadership skill does not work, not even with his father. This guy is just kind of clueless. Okay. Entrust him to my care, I'll bring him back. And Jacob says, my son will not go down with you. Okay, his brother's dead, he's the only one left. Oh, the rest of you don't count, by the way. He's the only one left. If harm comes to him on the journey you're taking, you will bring my grandhead down to the grave in sorrow. So this story is just, it gets complicated. Joseph, by giving them the money, actually caused more problems when they got home. Joseph didn't anticipate that. And you know why he doesn't anticipate that? We'll find out at the end what Joseph actually thinks. Okay. It's a fascinating what Joseph actually thinks. We don't find out until the end. It's kind of a big reveal. What is Joseph up to the whole time? Okay. Well, they have to go back. So this is what verse 3. Not Reuben, but Judah. You see the leadership skills that's being developed here within the covenant family. That's being revealed. Judah said to him, the men warned us solemnly, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you send our brother along with us, we will go down to buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. The man says, you will not see my face unless your brother is with you. Israel asked, why did you bring all this trouble on me by telling the men you had another brother? And they replied, the men questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. Is your father still living, he asked us. Do you have another brother? We simply answered his questions. How were we to know he would say, bring your brother down here? Then Judah said to his father, send the boy along with me, and we will go at once, so that we and you and our children may live and not die. I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. As it is, we had not delayed, we could have gone and returned twice. Okay, you got it? Personal responsibility. Reuben says, kill my kids. Judah says, it's on me. It's on me. I will guarantee his safety. I'm a man of my word. Okay, I make things happen. And the father says, okay. Oh, we skipped that part. But the father says, okay. We don't have time to read it all. And they go down, and this is where Jacob actually starts helping out. Bring some presents. Bring some stuff around here from Canaan. Make this guy happy, right? So eventually, he's believing their story, and he's trusting in Judah. Who do people follow? People follow Judah. Right? When Judah talks, people listen. Now this is where they got to Joseph. Joseph sees Benjamin, and he's like, okay. And he gets Simeon out of prison, and he has a big feast with all 12 brothers. And he served him by himself, the brothers by themselves, the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is detestable to the Egyptians. The men had been seated before him in the order of their ages, from the firstborn to the youngest. Joseph's had a little fun with them, right? And they looked at each other like, how does he know that? How does he know that, right? When portions were served to them, from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's. So they feasted and drank freely with him. Why did he do that? Okay, first maybe be nice to his brother, maybe. But you'll find out immediately what's going to happen. What's going on here is that Joseph has certain beliefs about his brothers, which is they are jealous of the sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin.
He has just cause.
So
Really bad.
he's going to try to do what? He's going to try to do what? He's going to try to create. He's going to try to provoke that jealousy. Okay? He's trying to make it worse. How come Benjamin always gets everything? Just like Joseph. He's just like Joseph. Look at that. I mean, we come to Egypt. We travel twice. We bring here. Simeon was in prison. He gets 5 times. Why does that happen? Right? How come everybody is nice to Benjamin? Just like, why does our dad like Joseph better? Right? So that's what Joseph's thinking. He's provoking that jealousy. Why? Because he's going to use that. We skipped that passage. There's no time to read all the passages. So we're over time, sorry. But we're going to get to the climax of the book of Genesis, and we need to get there. After they leave, Joseph has a servant stick a cup into Benjamin's bag. And they stick all their money back again. They travel out. Joseph sent servants to stop them and say, one of you stole Joseph's cup. And all the brothers are like, we didn't do it, no such thing. In fact, the person who was caught with it would die, the rest of us would be used slaves. And the brother said, and Joseph's servant says, no, we just want the guy who has the cup. The rest of you can go home. What does Joseph want?
His brother.
He wants Benjamin, right? Is this a kidnapping attempt? I'm convinced that it is. That all he wants is Benjamin. And he's given them an excuse to dump Benjamin, having just provoked them to jealousy. And now, Benjamin, you jerk, you deserve everything you get coming to you. You're going to be a slave in Egypt now. We're all going home. And then Benjamin will come back to the palace, and Joseph will treat him so nicely, right? Remember, Joseph doesn't care about the covenant anymore. He just wants his brother. We're going to leave in Egypt and be Egyptians. At this point, just like Isaac, Joseph has become the biggest threat to the covenant. Okay. Surprising to Joseph, the brothers didn't ditch Benjamin. They all came back. Okay. So Joseph was in the house when Judah and his brothers came in and they threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, what is this you have done? Don't you know a man like me can find things out by divination? And then Judah, the leader, right? What can we say to my Lord? What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? Our God has uncovered your servant's guilt. Benjamin, you idiot. They are convinced Benjamin is guilty. Okay? When there's no innocence to be had here. We are now my Lord's slaves. We ourselves and one who has found to have the cup. Solidarity. My brother's going to go in his prison, go become a slave. We're all going to become slaves. Okay, solidarity. Okay. But Joseph said, far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who has found to have the cup will be somehow my slave. The rest of you, go back to your father in peace. Go home. Okay. Not doing it. I only want one slave. And this is where the speech itself is longer than this. Okay? The speech is longer than this. This big long speech which Judah speaks and just passionately recounts the relationship that Benjamin has with his father. And talks about how difficult that is to even bring him here. And then finally we have this kind of what we call the culmination, the absolute climax of the book of Genesis. Judah says this, now then, please let your servant remain here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return to his brothers. He is guilty, I'm innocent, I love my father, I will take his place. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? Do not let me see the misery that will come on my father. Okay. And at this moment, Joseph breaks down. Okay. Joseph broke. Joseph could no longer control himself, but all his servant attendants, he cried out, have everyone leave my presence. So there's no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph, is my father still living? What is that question?
You killed my father already?
No.
No.
He never cared about it before.
He never thought his father's alive.
Oh, okay. There is that.
He never cared about it before. I think his father's he thinks his father's dead. That is the reveal that explains all of the stuff that Joseph did. If he thought his father's alive, wouldn't taking Benjamin away from him be an act of extreme cruelty? If he had cared at all about his father, what he did with getting Benjamin here would have hurt his father so badly, put his father in such a state of confusion. But no, he doesn't think his father's alive. He never believed them when they said that his father's alive. He thought he was dead, and that Benjamin just being stuck at home somewhere, in a pit somewhere, and not treating him very well, or maybe even dead. They actually brought him back. Oh, Benjamin's alive. Okay, I'm going to keep him here. Think about what that would have done to his father if they went back without him. He didn't even think that was even a possibility. He was operating under the assumption that Jacob was dead.
Because of his age, or why would he think
His age, or maybe because, I've been gone so long, I guess he missed me so badly, he must have died. I don't know. We don't know why Joseph thinks that. But it's clear here that at this point he finally asked the question, my father's alive. You wouldn't be offering this if my father wasn't alive. You must have a reason to offer your life in exchange for Benjamin's. And the only reason that could be is the father's alive, which means you're telling me the truth about what's going on. Which means, holy cow, I've been causing my dad a whole lot of problems. And holy cow, you guys have changed. You would have never done this. You didn't do it for me, right? But you're actually offering your life for your brother. And suddenly, and I'm thinking about this in terms of ramification of this family is something. This family is a covenant family. It's doing things that other families don't. Okay? It's self-sacrifice for the sake of the love of the Father. So what we have here then is the reconciliation. Jacob moves to Egypt. Genesis 48. So this is climax and denouement. The denouement is kind of everything is settled. They move to Egypt. Everybody's reconciled. They're all happy. Joseph gets the firstborn rights. Firstborn does go to Joseph. The firstborn rights is this. There is no tribe of Joseph, as you might notice. There is tribe of Manasseh and Ephraim. His two sons, double portion, become the 12 tribe, part of the 12 tribes of Judah, tribes of Israel.
Doesn't that make 13 tribes?
Yeah, except the Levites don't get land.
Right.
Yeah, as a punishment here and as a blessing in Exodus. Very interesting.
So there were 12 tribes, then there were 11 tribes, then there were 13 tribes, and
Yeah,
then there were 12 again.
yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah, gotta love it.
Yeah.
Okay. We need to look at Genesis 49 very, very briefly about what happens. This is Genesis 48. Jacob's about to die, brings all the kids over, and this is what his father should have done. Isaac didn't do this, right? Isaac should have said, all right, come over here, let's do the blessing, let's do the determination. Okay, Esau, you're my oldest, but you're an idiot. Jacob, you're just a tricky bastard, but okay, the covenant's going to you, sorry. That's what he should have said, okay? But instead, he's like hiding. Don't tell anybody. Just come over yourself. And that whole thing was a disaster with Isaac. Jacob does not do that. All 12 of you come along. Reuben, because you defiled your father's bed, the firstborn is taken away from you. Simeon, Levi, you guys are violent creatures. In fact, Levi, I don't think you can deserve a piece of land in the nation. He actually disinherits them from land. Okay, it's like, this is not, they call it the blessings. It's not very blessing oriented, okay? It is not blessing oriented. Then you get to Judah. Your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. It doesn't say that about Joseph. It says about Judah. You're a lion's cub, Judah. You return from the prey, my son. And like a lion, he crouches, lies down, like a lioness who dares to rouse him. The scepter, the ruling scepter, will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his.
Wow.
Just wow. If he will tether his donkey to a vine, his coat to the choicest branch. Why? Anybody understand the imagery here? What does a donkey do to a vine if it's tethered to it?
He eats it.
He'll eat the whole thing up. He just eat everything. So why would he do that? Because he doesn't care. If you have so much vine, so much good branch that you can just tie your donkeys to it, and it'll just eat it all up. Like, we got so much more. He will wash his garments in wine. Why? It's like water. You will use wine like water. And you will drink in your robes in blood of grapes. His eyes will be darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Actually, it's like his teeth would be whitened by milk. It's actually probably the better term. They have the bizarre idea, maybe it's not a bizarre idea, sorry. Maybe just had a poetic language. You'll drink so much milk, it'll purify your teeth. Okay. This is a description of material prosperity and abundance, and this is a description of absolute kingship. Book of Genesis, you have faith in Abraham. That's the foundation of people with God. Isaac, the need to avoid a small temptation that grows into something that destroys your faith. You go to Jacob, the life transformation, trusting yourself versus trusting God. And then finally, in the Judah-Joseph story, kingship is defined by self-sacrifice. Self-sacrificial love or the love of the Father. It's dying for your brother. And we have this, and then we jump straight into the New Testament, and Jesus, who dies for his brothers and sisters for the love of the Father, happening right here, straight out of Judah. Okay. So this is the book of Genesis, and it lays out for us what the people of God are supposed to be like, that other people see and will go, oh, I bless that, because they recognize God in it. Questions? I would love to spend. I would love to teach Book of Genesis, because that the whole thing is amazing. You can easily spend a year, a year on it. Just there's so many details, so many stories, so much of this going on. I'm just giving you glimpses of this, trying to track this all the way through. But these are the big movements. Yes.
Maybe you should just write a Sunday school curriculum so that we get the story of Judah instead of the story of Joseph.
That would be good. I try to teach that because people like Joseph, and I think Joseph is a good story. I mean, Joseph is a good story about suffering and being ethical and faithful. Joseph's not a bad guy. I made him sound a little bad, but he's not bad. His behavior is entirely understandable in his circumstances. He was faithful in times of trial, and when time came, he was trying to protect his brother. But one thing he did do was he completely forgot the covenant. And rightly so. When the covenant people treat you the way he was treated, that thing is nonsense, they'll think. And then when he saw what the covenant can do, and what it has done for Judah. It's like, you know what? I'm joining back in. So this was a redemption of Joseph as much as anything else, right? Bringing Joseph back into the fold, and it worked. So, yeah. But Joseph's a great story, but I think
There
Judah.
is a sense in which Joseph's life prefigures Christ as well. Right?
Yes, and so which is what I mean. Joseph figured. I mean, as the sage. I mean, he is the wise man
Right.
that prefigures Daniel and prefigures a lot of figures. Joseph is a great guy. I'm not trying to bash him. I'm just saying there's three named brothers. There's Joseph, which gets blessed as the oldest child in blessing, and he does very well. And there is Reuben, which goes absolutely nowhere, is an absolute failure of leadership. And then there is the one that's superlative. And once again, it's a superlative that comes out of drastic transformation. He was the one who sold Joseph. But even then, leadership skill and plenty in evidence. It's about having leadership skill and then using it for the right purposes.
Right, and such a different understanding of leadership to say, I'm responsible,
Fully responsible.
take me,
Take me.
rather than saying, hey, listen to me, I'll give you money.
Exactly, precisely, and so Judah's leadership skills completely becomes evident, but the goal in which he puts his leadership skill to is what sets him apart, and ultimately kingship is defined on sacrifice, not on power.
I was thinking about David as well when the Lord chooses David. And there's that brilliant sentence where David says, I'm not afraid of the lion or the bear because not one of my father's sheep will I let die. There's that great sense of responsibility that
He fights.
this is my father's
Right.
sheep, and I'm willing to die to save the sheep because it's my father's sheep.
Right? He gets it.
He gets it.
He gets it. He gets it. So.
And we're doing Micah, in our Bible study, and
Yeah.
some of these verses, they come alive because this is why the Lord is so upset with the corruption of the power structure. The way in which that patronage relationship that he designs
Right.
has completely gone to the dogs.
Right, the kingship fails.
Yeah, the kingship,
Right, the kingship
is
fails.
baptized.
The kingship becomes instead of sacrificing, it becomes and it's easy to say that, but in history, people die for kings. Kings don't die for people. That's kind of how it goes, and Judah here is the story here is trying to redefine kingship for the biblical people, but they're really in a way that's counter to any other human society. There's no getting around that. It's hard. And so it's not surprising that Israeli kings become just like all the other kings. And so eventually we need a king that's unlike any human king to pull it off. All right. Thank you very much.